So, exploratory online seminar number 46. Today, I like to cover RFM analysis for sales data. So, oh gosh, there is some kind of Japanese here. Okay, here we go. So, RFM, R stands for recency, and F stands for frequency, M stands for monetary, and they combine all of these three things. So like RFM analysis helps you understand your customers better based on the following three metrics, which is RFM. R is how recent your customers have purchased, and frequency is how often your customers have purchased. And monetary is how much amount your customers have spent so far. Okay. So a typical question is like, hey, like, who are the most loyal customers, or who are spending a lot? Like which customer like we should pay more attention. That sort of the questions. And then typically like you take sales, right? Like how much amount they have spent so far. Then this is like x-axis is based on like how much the customers spend. And I stack up all the customers. And then obviously, like right-hand side, these are the customers, let's say they're spending like amount like $4,000 or $5,000. Think of it, this is like for a year, 12 months or last 12 months or something like that. And then, okay, so these customers spending a lot. So maybe like we should pay attention to or like treat them as a loyal customers or something like that. But there's another way to look at it too, is that like based on how often the customers purchase. So this is like based on like number of the purchases or number of the orders that customers have made so far or in the last 12 months. And then like same thing, like I stack up all the customers. Then obviously the right hand side, these are the customers have purchase like more than 45 times or 60 times in the last 12 months. So these customers seems like come to our shop or store pretty often. And maybe each time they might not spend a crazy amount of money, but they can continue to spend. So we should maybe treat them as also loyal customers, or we should spend pay more attention to this type of customers as well. Then I visualize it, or I position all the customers based on the frequency and also the sales. So like y-axis is the amount of money that each customer spent, and the x-axis is how often they come to our shop, right? And then I just kind of gave a different color based on where they are. And obviously, like you approach in a different way for each sort of like, let's call it segment. So red segment on left-hand side top, these are the customers who spent a lot, but they don't really come to our shop often. Maybe they came just one time, or two times, and then they may kind of, big buying, but they might not come back for a while, or they might never come back, right? And on the other hand, right-hand side top, the green area. So these are the customers come to our shop often, and at the end they spend a lot of money. So these are the really, kind of typical sense. These are the loyal customers. We should treat them in a different way or something like that. And then for the right-hand side bottom, the blue area, these are the customers come often, but they make small purchases. They don't spend a lot at the end, but they come often. Then, instead of like ignoring them, it's actually their potential. They come often, so there might be something, to make them come to our shop often. So maybe we should talk to them. Maybe we should provide them some sort of like a promotion so that they can spend a little, extra or something like that. So we have the different actions based on the different segments of the customers, right? So by having just at this point, we have two measures or two metrics, and then that help us understand the customers from, for seeing from different perspectives. Now, but are they still purchasing? And that's another question. Is that so now I again visualize all the customers, and the x-axis is the last time they have purchased. So some of the customer right hand side is like they purchased in the last month in April. So they just purchased very recently. So these are the customer probably like come back often, or they became the customers recently or something like that. And then the left-hand side, let's say like August 2020, these are the customers who made the purchases, but in the August last year, but they haven't made any purchases since then. They didn't come back for like almost like 10 months or something like that. So then we should take into our account that how recent they have purchased too, because again we want to approach a different way. Like if we want to do the promotion or something like that, like, customers keeps coming back and we don't really have to approach to remind them like our product. But if they haven't come back for a long time, like we should take actions to bring them back or something like that. So this last time, when was the last time they purchased or how recent they have purchased is also important for us to make decisions what type of actions we should take to promote our businesses. Right. So this is what I mean is like RFM analysis helps you understand your customers better based on the following three metrics. And because you can use these metrics to score the customer, each customer, like you can give some score based on this like RFM. And then by using those numbers, then you can segment the customers into multiple groups. Then you can optimize whatever the action that you're going to take. So then maybe like you can bring some customers back, or you can promote extra products, or you can provide some discounts for particular section of the customers or something like that. Okay, so now. So I picked two metrics like frequency and monetary, or like sales, and then how often they come, and then like I place all the customers. Okay, and then this we call it two dimensions, right? And then I created some kind of segment or groups based on where they are, right? I created three sections on the x-axis and three sections on the y-axis of monetary. Okay, and then these customers, the right-hand side top is circled by red color or squared by red color, red border. So typical sense, I mean, like these are the ideal customers, right? If we just focus on the frequency monetary, they come often and they spend a lot. And then these are the customers, the left-hand side bottom, that's the least ideal because they don't come often and then they don't spend so much, right? And then left-hand side top, these are the customers who spend the most but rarely come back. They haven't come. They don't come to our shop often. But maybe like we can just send some send promotional emails and then bring them back often. Then because these customers might be even wealthy customers. If they come and they spend a lot, or then maybe like we can figure out how we can bring them back often. And the right-hand side bottom, these customers come often, but they don't purchase a lot. But maybe we can provide some kind of discount or some kind of recommendation so that they can spend a little extra money or something. Okay, and then that means we can just kind of create, and not only like creating a segment, but also based on number of the customers, how many customers are in each section. We give the different color to sort of like visualize like which section we have more customers. Then we can see some trend or patterns. Typically, we use heat map. It doesn't have to be heat map. We can use scatter plot, or bubble chart, or other chart as well. But let's say like we use a heat map, and just heat maps gives you only basically the color that represent how many customers are there. So in this case, the right-hand side, when you see the red color, that's where most customers are, or the many customers are compared to other section. Then you can understand not just customers, but also you get your business. Like you can understand, how your business is doing, what type of the business you have created. And also you can segment this. Let's say like this, maybe the product line, for example, like, PC, if you are Apple, and then you have the PC product, and then the mobile product, and music product, and then, you can see like how your customers are, how your business are doing for each section or each segment of the businesses. Okay, so that's really the RFM. I mean, you can visualize many other ways as well, but just to get this chart is pretty already pretty valuable. Then now the challenge is the concept of the RFM analysis is pretty simple, but the challenge is the data. So ideally, like you want to have the data like this. Like each row represent each customer. And each customer has this monetary and frequency and then recency, right? RFM, in this case, MFR. But you want to have these metrics that basically these are the score for each customer. So if you have this data, then all you need to do is just, in the exploratory case, just assign the column from monetary goes to the x-axis or y-axis, and recency goes to the y-axis, and so on. Somehow frequency has a green square box, but that should have been on the monetary. But you get the point. The challenge though is you typically have the sales data looks like this. So each row represent, I'm talking about the very typical scenario, but each row represent each order or each purchase, right? So not each customer. And then, each customer like makes multiple purchases, right? Like in this case, for example, I give the color for each customer. So the blue colored customer here has 6 lines. So 6 lines meaning that this person made 6 purchases, or it could be 6 products. This person bought or something. Okay, but we want to get the RFM data, which is the right hand side. So we want to somehow transform sales data to RFM data. And once you get the RFM data, then all you need to do is just visualize, with whatever your favorite chart. Okay, so this seminar is really about how to prepare the data for RFM, and then I'm going to talk about how you can quickly visualize this right-hand side data with a heat map chart. Okay, so let's get started. Pretty much this is going to be a live demo. So I'm going to get the sample data that I published to our server. So you can access to, you can also access to if you like, now or later. And you want to do the RFM, you type it, and then obviously there are 2, but actually like we're going to use sample data for RFM analysis. This is the data we want to use. So I'm going to click on the import button to download that data and click save. And I'm going to keep the default name. You can change it if you like. And then once the data is imported, then you get the summary view. And then so we have order date. Maybe like let's go to the table view. So each row represents each order or purchase. However, there's a caveat here. It's actually for each product. So I'm going to talk about this a little later, but it's this each order. It's not necessarily for each order, but it's actually the product. So what I mean is like if you purchase like 3 products in one order, then you're going to have 3 lines, 3 rows. Okay. And then like you have the information about the customer, like which market, which region, which country this customer is coming from, and then how much they have spent, or how many of that product they have purchased. Okay, and then we have the customer ID. That's the ID that we can recognize each customer. We can identify each customer. Okay. Okay, and there was another thing, the order date. So this is the duration, the 2017 January to 2020 December 31st. It's about like 4 years of the data. Okay, so what we can do is here. Okay. The important thing is this is a sort of like a goal, right? Like we're gonna get recency, frequency, and monetary. These are the 3 metrics we wanna have for each customer. We're gonna score with these metrics for each customer. So recency, let's just kind of re-summarize this. How many days have passed since the last purchase? So that's a recency. Then the frequency, the total number of the purchases or orders per day. Monetary, the total amount of the purchases or total sales amount per day. The reason I'm doing this per day is so here's a monetary. We eventually we want to calculate the total sales for each customer, and we want to divide by the duration. And what duration is that each customer's duration varies. So let's say like one customer's, just relatively recently became the customer and then been with us for only like 6 months or something. But then another customer has been with us and has been shopping for like the last 4 years. Then for them, the total sales or total sales amount would be different. I'm kind of generally speaking, right? Wouldn't be surprised like if they are different because longer they are, then the more they would spend, and the shorter they are, then the smaller they would have spent. So it's not really fair comparing two customers or like all the customers by ignoring the duration, how long they have been with us. So that's why like we want to divide by the duration. That's where this whole per day thing coming from. So this customer is 30 days or like 360 days. Let's use that to divide the total sales for each customer. Then we get that total sales amount per day. Same thing for frequency. So we want to divide the duration. So therefore, we need to calculate this duration thing. What's the duration? So the last day of purchase for each customer minus the first day of purchase of each customer. And then we can calculate the duration for each customer. And then once we get the duration, then we can use that to calculate monetary and frequency calculation. Okay, so that means first we need to get these four things for each customer. First date of purchase, last date of purchase, and then total sales and the number of purchases or orders. To do, we can use a summarize because we want to actually group the data by the customer and then get, then eventually kind of shrink into one row for each customer, but with four information as listed in the previous slide. Okay, so let's go to the exploratory here. And then I'm going to hide the left-hand side. Okay. And then first, from the customer ID column, and then you want to select the summarize bracket aggregate. And then the default, and like now I have like number of rows for each customer being calculated in the preview window. So from here, though, what I want to do is first thing first, let's get the first day of purchase for each customer. So like I'm going to select the order date, and the default is a medium, but we want to get first date. So we can actually use a min function, and then this is the first date of purchase for each customer. And the similar thing for last day. Here is I want to do max or last date. And then this way, like we have the first day and last day, and then later on, like we're gonna do the subtraction to calculate the duration. And now we wanna get the total sales for each customer, and that's pretty simple. I'm using a sum function, and then how many times the customers have purchased. So if I selected this number of rows, right? And then there's one problem. Like I said, I'm going to just go back to the slide here. So if I give the color for each customer, and then you can see that this is a blue color customer here, 6 rows. So if I use a number of rows calculation, then it will return 6 for this customer. But when you look at the order date, seems like this customer purchased on July 3rd. And the next time, this customer purchased on January 7th. And it seems to be kind of more natural to think, hey, this customer have purchased it twice. It just happened that the first time this customer purchased like 4 different products. So it's think of it, it's like when you get the invoice and then it's like a line item is each row. So then basically like we know, okay, this customer have purchased twice. So we want to get the number two as the answer for this customer. And how we can do that? Well, we can actually use that unique number, or there's a calculation called unique. So you want to use that function to return unique number with the order date values. Then unique number with order date values for this blue customer is like July 3rd and then January 7th. I mean, 2017 July 3rd and 2020 January 7th. So it's a two, and that's what we want. And that's what we can do here. So instead of using number of rows, we want to select order date. And then here, we can use this unique count. And that's the function that you want to use. And here is like order date unique. And this is one, that means this customer purchased only once. And two means this customer purchased twice. Okay, and then I think these are the four information that we wanted. So I'm gonna click on round bottom to calculate these for each customer. And so like it summarized or aggregated. So originally we had 51,000 rows, but now we have 17,000 rows because that obviously like each customer, I mean, they'll duplicate row, not quote unquote duplicate rows or like multiple rows for each customer. So now it's shrinked. Okay. So now I think we are pretty much ready to start calculating monetary frequency and recently. But before going there, there's one thing I like to do is here I can see like one. And then this one is meaning this customer have purchased only once. Okay, and so it's up to you. But for this scenario, I like to exclude it because just one purchase probably it's not worth for like analyzing or investigating further because they just came and then never come back. So let's remove this customer and then let's focus on like at least they have purchased more than twice. It can be 3, it can be 5, depends of like your data. But for here, I like to exclude this one. So to do, I can go to the filter and then select one with the operator. I'm going to select the greater than. And if I set 1, then greater than 1, meaning only the customers with more than 2 purchases will remain. So here, like now we have, and then when we go to the summary view, we can see the minimum value for this column order date unique is actually 2. So from 2 to 9. Okay. So now, before moving further, like I like to actually change the column name because it's kind of like confusing, order date, min, max, unique. So I'm gonna rename it. So here, order date min. So this is the first date or order, and the next one is the last date order. I'm going to use order. Order purchase is basically the same thing in this context. And then here's a sales. That's cool. And then this is a number of orders. I don't need to use this like a underscore. Like I could go like this, like with a space. It's fine as well. Either way, I personally like using somehow underscore, but it's really up to you. Okay, but now like I can click on it, and then now like we have, it's a relatively better naming for the columns. Okay, so that looks cool. And another thing from here, oh yeah, I think from here we are ready to start calculating RFM. So let's do that. So let's see here, create calculations. So we want to calculate monetary frequency, recency, right? So these are the 3 things we like to calculate. And you remember, like we're gonna do a division, like a sales divided by duration to calculate the monetary. And then frequency, the number of orders divided by duration that's our frequency. And then the recency is the last date of all minus last date of a given customer. So the duration is last day, order day minus first order day, right? So like we're gonna do that. So let's do it here. So this column minus this column. So I'm gonna select that last day order column and then go to create calculation. And then minus and first date order. And then that's the duration. Okay. And then we got the new columns. And here's the thing. So it says diff time, that's a data type. And then typically, I mean, like this is like a difference in time or something, but it's a special data type. It's coming from R that we use as a foundation of this product. But diff time is a kind of tricky. It has more information than just we can see here, but in order to calculate by using this, you cannot calculate because this is not numeric. So if you try to do like division or even like adding or minusing, it doesn't give you the way like you expect it. So when you see something like this, first thing you want to do is convert this to numeric data type. Then you can treat them as numeric values. So from column header menu, change data type, convert numeric, and then here's a unit. So in this case, I like to use like days. By the way, yes, what is this data? Oh yeah, that's fine. In this case, I like to change that to days. Then I can treat this number as a days, but at the same time as a numerical values. So I'm going to select new days. I'm going to override because I don't need to keep this column. So click on run button. And then basically the number is the same, it's days, but now the data type is numeric. And then we can use this to, later on, like dividing the sales number or number of orders. Okay, so that's, having said that, let's actually do that calculation. So we can use, divide the sales, here we go, create calculations, and then divide by duration. So this is our monetary. Okay. And then here's the number of orders. So if we divide this by duration, and this is going to be our frequency. Okay. So we got the monetary and frequency, and all we need is recency. So how to calculate recency? So recency is like how many days pass or how many time pass since the last purchase of each customer. So here, so typically if you have the data up to today, then what you want to do is you want to calculate here. You can use the today function or now function, and the today function or now function returns the day, today's information. The difference between them is that today is for the date data type, now is for the project city data type. So the difference between date and project city, date is for the data that has only date, and the project city has the information with of date and time. The projects is a kind of unique standard name, but a CT is a calendar time. So the last T really means the time. So in this case, let's take a look at our data. Here it says project city, CT. So because if we have the time information, even though the time part is all zero. So if this data when you import and the data you imported didn't have the time information, typically it becomes date data type. When you have the time information, then becomes the project city. You can convert this if, hey, you know what, like I want to treat this as a date for some reason, then you can always convert that from the column header menu and then convert data type and convert to date as well. Okay, but nonetheless, we have project city. So if we want to do the calculation from today minus the last purchase date, then you want to use a now function. So it's so it's up to the data type that you have. However, today I like to do slightly different things. I like to use max function. And a max function, what it does is it will return the maximum number, maximum value of this particular column called last order date. So what that means is basically this is the last day of all data, not one particular customer. And then we can, so what's the last day? What's the max day? So basically this one, where is that? There you go. So this last day order, if I use the function called max, it will return this number. It's max is a 2020 December 31st. So this is the last day of this entire data of like 5,424 rows. Okay, and then pretend like that's the today, and then okay, how many days before the date that each customer purchased, and then that let's use that as our recency today. So I'm just using it as sort of for this demo. It really you still could use like a today or now function to do the calculation based on today as well. But there's just a different way, and pretty much will give you the same thing. Okay. So having said that, let's do the calculation. So from column header menu, create a calculation, and then we have a last date order. What I like to do is basically use a max function, and then bracket, and then here's the last date order, and then bracket close, and minus. So this is what I wanted. So basically, this will return, the first part will return like 2020 December 31st. That happened to be the last date of this data. And then minus, this is like each customer. So that, for example, the first row, this column will return 2020 January 7th. So that calculation, the result of the calculation is going to be the days that indicate or shows how many days pass, since the since the last purchase. So here I'm going to just say recency, and then click run button, and I get the recency column. Okay, and then now again, same thing. This is diff time, so it's kind of like confusing. So let's convert this data type to numeric and days, and then click run, and then now like I get the recency column as a numeric characters. So this one is based on the data. Sometimes it's in a diff time data type. Sometimes it's actually based on seconds, based on based on the seconds, based on the days, based on the date underlying data duration. So that's another weird thing with the diff time. It's like you really never know what's the real unit of each numeric value. So that's why like when you see diff time or something like that, you just want to convert to numeric and with the unit that you know. Okay, so now like we have monetary frequency recency. So we have RFM data. So now once you get this, then it's time to visualize the data. Okay, so let's go to the chart. And again, you can use other chart as well, but today I like to introduce heat map to visualize this data. So I'm going to select the heat map. And the x-axis, let's use a recency. I mean, heat map, the challenge of the heat map is a 2-dimension. It's only x-axis, y-axis, and we have 3 dimensions. So there's a problem there. However, like you can kind of swap in between different metrics, and then to understand that you can see the data from different perspectives as well. But let's start with the recency, and then I'm going to assign monetary as a y-axis. And then here it is. So what just happened is here, recency is a numerical values. And therefore, in order for it to be displayed or visualized in a heat map, it creates a buckets, 5 buckets, and based on the value. From like here is like recency, like 0 to 282 days. By the way, 0 to 282 days is basically like, how many days passed since the last purchase. So in this scenario, this number here is a smaller number, means relatively recent purchases. as opposed to here, the 1,129 or something like that. That's how many days passed since their last purchases. So it's like a long time ago, right? And the y-axis is how much amount they have spent. Then it's like kind of divided into five sort of like buckets and this is called equal widths because here I thought I created somewhere here. We call it bucket or binning. You might have heard of. So converting a numerical value to sort of categories or set of categories, and then you can visualize with a heat map or even like other ways too. So what we have done here, or it's done automatically, is using equal widths, and then basically dividing into five based on the values, sort of equal widths, right? It's like dividing by 5. There's other way to do it, which is equal frequency. The equal frequency is after divided, and each group will have almost like the same numbers. Sometimes you cannot divide one person, but um, but basically, after divided, in this case, each bucket or each group have 4 people. So this is called equal frequency. Therefore, where it's divided on the x-axis is slightly different. It's not like 100 to 200 to 300 to 400 anymore. It can be like 112.53 or something like that, because what it's important is not the dividing number, it's actually the dividing result of how many rows, in this case the customers. Okay, so here's one problem we see, like most of the customers actually here, like a 3,000. And then once you get something like this, there's nothing nothing is interesting about, because all the customers are here. And this type of the thing tend to happen, especially when you have like an outlier. Seems like there are not many people actually purchasing this much. But there's only one person around here, and then therefore it's a completely blue. And the same thing, the recency is like not many people, luckily, not many people have purchased a long time ago for their last time. Most of the customers kind of purchasing relatively recently. So all the customers are here. 2 things you can do. You can remove the outliers and then try to visualize again, or you can actually use the equal frequency instead of this equal widths. And that's what I like to do here. Click on the green button, and then instead of equal widths, I'm going to use the equal frequency. Number of categories 5, that's fine. And then click apply. And then all became red color, because it's slightly different, but pretty much the same numbers. Because they are numbers, probably tight numbers. So that's cool. And then I like to do the same thing for the y-axis as well, like in equal frequency, and then divided by 5. But in each section, when you combine these 5 groups, each row, when you combine the number of rows, will be same as second line or third line. But when you combine those 2 axes, then you will have the different number in each cell. Okay, and then this is cool. Then another thing we can do is like we don't really understand what this is kind of nice. I mean, like you can see sort of like the range of the numerical values, but sometimes it's good to give some name. So you can actually give the label text here. So let's I'm going to do very small. So from small number to the bigger number. So I'm going to give small, and then neutral, and then large, and then very large, or something like that. And then like here, the y-axis is sort of like, hey, this is sort of like subjective me, but hey, there's like a very large amount because they have spent, and then very small amount here. Or something like that. And I want to do the same thing for the recency as well, instead of like looking at the numerical value. So this is actually, we got to be careful, because smaller numbers meaning actually the recent, and then bigger numbers is actually the old, like a long time ago. So I like to do is a very recent, and then recent, and then new, or neutral, and then old purchase, and a very old purchase. and then something like this. So here, it's in terms of presentation wise, it's easier to read. So what this is like, okay, so we have 339 customers. So these are the customers in this data with equal frequency, consider as customers who spend the most, and also who have purchased a long time ago, and they haven't purchased for a while. And then there's one challenge of this chart. It's kind of weird because we human beings are so used to see the data, the old data on the left hand side, the newer data on the right hand side. So always the times goes from left to right. We're so used to it. I think some countries or some culture might have a different practice, but most of the country or cultures will have this practice of like the time goes from left to right. But however, this one is actually violating our sort of intuitive understanding. It's because it's starting from old at the right hand side and then going to the new to the left hand side. So we can flip it so then we don't have to use our brain to understand it. We can just intuitively understand it. So I mean, we always use brain, but what I mean is that we don't have to think twice. So the x-axis, we can change the order. So from the menu, and the x-axis sort order, and if instead of from left to right, we can change to right to left. Then now we see like very old to very recent, and this is kind of like what we used to, at least what I'm used to. So here is again the same thing. Is like a biggest amount they spent, and then the very old, the last time they have purchased. So obviously these are the customers. I'm going to click on here and then get this pop up, and then I like to click on show detail. So these are the 339 customers I should contact and then bring them back, because when they purchase a lot. So I like to bring them back and then make more money, right? So anyway, so that's the kind of quick kind of workflow of preparing the data. I use recency and monetary here, but obviously you can bring in a frequency instead of like, let's say, monetary or recency, and you can swap around and create multiple charts and then so on. Here's one more thing though. Last thing I like to do. This is cool. I'm doing it for like all customers. But do you remember like we used to have like here this step 2, we summarize. But before we summarize the original data, we had this information, for example, something like market. And can we create that heat map, the RFM analysis heat map for each market? One for Africa, one for Asia Pacific, and so on. And then the answer is, of course, you can. So, but the problem is, in this summarize step, we lost the market information, because when you summarize, unless you explicitly specify how you want to summarize, that column is not going to come in. So I'm going to modify this summarize step. Okay, and then the two ways you can do. One is bring that market to the group by, then each group of each customer, and then you can do summarize order date and sales and so on. Another thing is that, hey, each customers might be in different markets when they purchase. For example, you might have purchased in United States this month, but 3 months ago you happen to be in UK and you purchase online, and then these are the same customers, but we don't want to count them separately as a UK market and the United States. Instead, we want to treat you as a US customer because you purchased in the United States for your last purchase or something, or maybe like you have purchased 5 times and then 4 out of them you purchased from United States, and only once you purchased from Sweden last time you went to business trip. Then you purchased from Sweden the last one, but that doesn't mean like we should treat you as a Swedish customer. Maybe we should treat you American customer, because most of the time you purchase from America, right? So if in that case, you can actually use here and the value, and then you can select the market, and then the default something called mode, the most frequent value. So that means for these customers, this customer might have this, it says one, so this is probably one, but think of it as like, let's say like a five or something, like five purchases. And then maybe like, majority, they say like 3 times or 4 times is from Asia Pacific, and then the other time Europe and America, and it's still considered as Asia Pacific. So that's, I like this way of doing this, but however, if hey, each customer never purchase from a different place because, I know if they do, we don't really care. In that case, you can bring the market to the group by instead of like a value. So either way. So let's use the market in the value and use a mode function that returns the most frequent value for each customer. And I'm going to click on run button. And then once the summarized calculation is done, and I'm going to go to the last step, and then do that whole calculation again. And then look at that here, we have the market information that has the information for each customer. Then I can go to the chart and then go here under the repeat by. Now I should see market information. If I assign this, I get 5 heat map. And then I'm going to just modify this for, let's say, like 3 columns format or something. Then like I can see, like a different patterns actually. For example, Asia Pacific Europe, like it's sort of like a, presenting a similar pattern as a generic. So the very old and very large, this area has the most customers. But when I look at the United States, the more customers are actually around here, right-hand side bottom. So this is very recent, and then but less spending. So I can start seeing like different patterns, and then so this will help you to sort of like segment better in each market as well. Okay, so that's it. That's it for today. Let me just summarize what we have done today. Here. Okay. So the RFM analysis helps you understand your customers better based on the following 3 metrics. Recency is how recent they have purchased, frequency, how often they have purchased, and monetary, how much they have spent. And you can use these metrics to score the customers and segment them so that you can take more appropriate or more optimized actions. And also you can understand, sort of like your business, your health of your business. And then by using that, something like repeat buy, then you can even like segment and how, your businesses are in each section as well. But when you do it, the most challenging part is not the analysis itself or even visualize itself. It's actually how you prepare the data. So typically you have the sort of a transactional level data, then you want to convert it or transform. Mostly you use a summarize and then calculation steps to create or prepare the RFM data. Once you get the data, then all you need to do is just assign those columns and then visualize it. This seminar, like I use a heat map, but you could use other charts such as scatter chart or so on as well. So that's it for today. And then the next seminar next week, we are planning for survey data. So survey data is typically like you ask questions to the customers, and then your customers give you like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores based on the questions, or you provide a free text form. So and then the customers type in some text. So those types of data, like what type of analysis you can do, those are the subjects of the next seminar. And you can check our online seminar page and see the upcoming future seminars as well as the past seminars recording as well. Okay, that's it for today. And then like I like to open up for a Q&A session.